I did my banned book report on Animal Farm by George Orwell. Orwell wrote this novel in 1944, and it discusses the emergence of the Russian Revolution and the Soviet communism at the time. And in short, the animals on the farm overthrow their oppressor, which is Farmer Jones, and quickly after that, the pigs decide that they are the new rulers or leaders. And there's Snowball and Napoleon, which are the two on the front. And these represent Leon Trotsky and Joseph Stalin, who were rivals during this era. Throughout the novel, the pigs display very violent behavior, and eventually they adapt the behaviors of their original human oppressors. And at the end of the book, you can't tell the pigs apart from the humans because they have adapted those behaviors. After its publication, Orwell had a really hard time publishing this book because of the anti-Stalinist and totalitarian views. It was thought to be inspiring enough to start a new communist rebellion. Of course, it was immediately banned by the USSR because it went against their views, it went against their leaders, and they didn't want the people of the USSR to know what the rest of the world thought about them. It was immediately made illegal, but several people in Soviet Russia still got pirated copies of the book and read it. It was unbanned in 1980 when the Soviet Union collapsed. Other communist countries, China, North Korea, Cuba, they still have this book banned because of its anti-communist views. Between 1943 and 1945, the Allied forces, which was France, the U.S., Britain, and of course the Soviet Union, had this book banned. And for France, the U.S., and Britain, this was to keep their relationship with the Russians on good terms. This was during World War I, and the Allies, of course, were against the Axis powers, and without the Russians, could have turned out totally different. So they didn't want to create any problems with their ally. In 1945, when the war was over, the U.S., France, and Britain all unbanned the book, and the first U.S. edition of Animal Farm premiered in 1946. Something very interesting is that the CIA actually funded a film of Animal Farm. They filmed it in Britain to kind of keep their involvement under wraps. They started the production of the filming in 1951, and it took 3 years to complete. In 1954, a launch party type thing was held at the United Nations in New York, and the book received a ton of praise. It was very, very, very promoted by the U.S. However, the ending of the film and the ending of the book did not align. In the book, of course, at the end, the pigs become undistinguishable from their original human oppressors. And the end of in the end of the film, the animals, other than the pigs, so the other animals on the farm, ask for help from outsiders, and with that help, they're able to crush their evil rulers. In 1964, there was a play which was called Animal Farm, and there was a festival, a Theater of Nations Festival, and it was held in the U.S., and the play was banned from objections from Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, I know I didn't say that right, and Bulgaria. So the play was not allowed to be held at the festival, and many, many, many Americans were very upset at this. They didn't understand why a U.S. festival was listening to other countries about something like that. Again, in 1991, the play was banned in Kenya, And an article from the Washington Post in 1991 by Neil Henry states, at a time when popular movements for democracy and calls for more political freedom are gaining power across Africa after decades of repressive authoritarian rule, Kenya's moldy single party state repeatedly has invited its people to join this trend and then prevented them from doing it. The Kenyan government chose to ban the play in order to lessen the likelihood of a rebellion, much like how the USSR banned it in the beginning. In the 1960s, it was banned in several states in the U.S. Currently, it is not banned in the U.S., but in 1965, it was banned in Wisconsin. 1968, it was banned in New York. 1982 in Georgia, and 1987 in Florida. But none of those held, none of them stuck, and it's currently not banned within the U.S. The most current banning of the book happened in the United Arab Emirates, and that happened in 2002. And they banned the book because it went against their Islamic values. So it showed alcoholic drinks, pigs, and other indecent images, which caused it to be banned. The book, I know for myself, when I was in high school, we read this book. It's a required book, and through some research, I saw that it's a required text in almost all high schools nationwide. And just like the CIA involvement in the film production, it just goes to show how much the U.S. promoted this anti-communist book.